What was manifested yesterday was anger and suspicion. Where does this anger come from that has radicalized a group of activists who are ready to bear it all for their comrade?
Let's try to listen to that question again. I will read it to you here. Simon Kagwanjala asked Imam Kasozi, what was manifested yesterday was anger and suspicion. Where does this anger come from that has radicalized a group of activists who are ready to bear it all for their comrade? That is the question. Seems like a fair question, and I can give an answer to this question. Now, I want you to listen to Imam Kasozi in his response. Listen to what he says and who he blames.
I told you before, and I want to say it again, survival. That's where it is coming from. Struggle for survival. People, respected people, whom we would respect, have also become survivors. They are looking for the next meal. And because of that, there is growing impatience, because there is fear that if I miss this meal today, I may not get again. If I miss lunch, supper is not uncertain. What will happen? Will I survive up to tomorrow? I told you before, and I want to say it again. Survival. That's where it is coming from.
Oh my God. This is what he said. Ignore the non-sequiturs. He says, I have told you before, and I want to say it again. Survival. That's where it is coming from. Struggle for survival. People looking for the next meal, and because of that, there's growing impatience, because there's fear that if I miss this meal today, I may not get again. If I miss lunch, supper is not certain. Will I survive tomorrow? Now, for someone that is who just started following Ugandan politics like yesterday or right now, might look at the response from Imam Kasozi and say, oh, what a reasonable man is trying to paint an image of what's going on in Uganda. But he's deliberately or unconsciously doesn't give you the real reason. And I'll come back to the subject of radicalism. But before I do, let me tell you what has caused radicalism in Uganda, especially what we saw at Ssegirinnya's burial. Abduction, torture, and killing of innocent Ugandans. Poverty, extreme abject poverty. Stifling voices of dissent, the violation of human rights, to mention but a few. That is what is causing the radicalism. Martin Luther King reminds us that riot is the language of the unheard. It is not about survival. I do not understand why everything should rotate around money.
You're watching Mordecai Marissa Political Commentary. Please consider subscribing to help grow Uganda's Voices of Struggle ecosystem. Thank you.
Very glad to be here on Mordecai Marissa TV.
Mordecai Marissa. We're going to use both languages in this podcast, this conversation. But before I do, I would let you know that last year I wrote a book, The Odyssey of the Optimist. You can go on and purchase yourself a copy on Amazon. It's only $12 paperback, and hardcover is $15, and on Kindle, it's only $6. I tell a story of my life, and one of the reasons why I do is because it is my story, and I choose when I want to tell it. The foreword was written by none other than the leader of opposition in the Ugandan parliament, Mr. Joel Ssenyonyi, or Honorable Joel Ssenyonyi, and commentary and recommendations from other people like Dr. Jimmy Spire Sentongo, Agatha Tyre, Dalton Kawesa, Samson Kasumba, Andrew Chamagelo, to mention but a few. Order yourself a copy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if my camera looks like it's a little dark, but as long as you can hear me. Look, Sheikh Imam Kasozi was hosted on NBS following the chaos that ensued at the burial of our comrade, Honorable Ssegirinya Muhammad. I want to be as open as I can to let you know that I'm a foot soldier. I've seen folks on social media who use that as some sort of an insult. A Katiguafuka foot soldier. Yes, I do not deny that. And when you refer to me as a foot soldier, I feel proud. Yes, I am that. A thing you don't like, a thing you think is an insult or an abuse, I like that. Please. So, following what happened at the burial of Honorable Ssegirinya and the chaos and everything, he was brought in on NBS TV to weigh in on what happened. And he opened, they opened this session with Imam Kasozi saying that, he's not going to take sides, not going to be biased. But I can guarantee you 99% of his arguments were against Bobi Wine and the foot soldiers. That's why I usually tell you that you don't have to blow your own trumpet. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm not going to do this. Let us just see it. You don't have to tell us. We can see. When you say, I'm going to be objective, we can simply see when you're not. You don't have to mention. So now let me talk about the radicalism they talk about. There's no radicalism. It is just folks in Uganda who are deciding to stand their ground in situations where they think they're being taken advantage of. Now, that can be described as a threat, as radicalism to some folks who are choosing to take sides. There's no any amount of radicalism. And what I really hate or dislike, hate is a very big word, but I do hate this, is folks choosing to ignore the real radicalism in our country. Radicalism is only on one side, a side that tortures political opponents, that kills them and abducts them. That's where radicalism is. But you cannot get these choice words and tag them along a group of people who do not have weapons to fight, who have not caused any sort of violence, and you say, oh, the radicalism. I mean, do you know what that really means? You can use some other choice words to describe what happened. That's not radicalism. Let me tell you, when Museveni was going through what the change-seeking Ugandans are going through right now, when he was going through that during the 70s and the 80s, he was extremely radical that he decided to launch a war against a sitting government. They killed people. That is radicalism. I do not understand this system or this culture of just using random words on folks or radicalism. There's no radicalism whatsoever. Oh, the radicalism on the other side. There's only one side that is extreme, one side that is radical, one side that is intolerant, and that side is called the NRM regime, superintended over by Yoweri Kaguta Museveni and his minions, lackeys and sycophants. That's it. Let's go on. Now, Simon Kagwanjala asked Imam Kasozi this question again.
There is a funeral that's been arranged to send off someone, and the group suspects that the killers, if I could quote, the killers have organized a parallel funeral.
But the killers could be on either side.
What does he say? Here is a funeral that's been arranged to send off someone, and the group suspects that the killers, if I could quote, the killers have organized a parallel funeral. And do you know, you've just heard what he responded by. He says, but the killers could be on either side. Let me tell you, what ensued at the burial of Honorable Ssegirinya was emotions, especially one of anger, taking over, consuming people. There's another emotion that is consumed this gentleman, Imam Kasozi, that he doesn't even recognize. That emotion is called sadness. It is overriding his judgment that is not even able to give a reasonable argument. When you say, but the killers could be on either side. What a false equivalence. What are you even saying, Mr. Imam Kasozi? The killers could be on either side. A complete ignoring of what Ssegirinya said before his death. Ssegirinya told us who were his tormentors. He told us what group had subjected him to what he was going through. The killers cannot be on both sides. He told us. He told us what he was going through. He made public wills and testaments. Apart from what he told us, we saw his feet rotting, being denied medical attention or access to medical attention. We have seen photos of how he was tortured, his private parts. And then you say the killers could be on both sides. Like, this gentleman is completely choosing to be like, okay, I won't see what NRM did. The killers are on the other side. What's wrong with you, sir? The killers could be on both sides. And usually when you go on these platforms, you have people say, oh, thank you so much, Sheikh, what you have said. Listen to what this gentleman is saying. Then he went on to say,
You're watching Mordecai Marissa Live.
Who? Now the question we can ask, who of the two groups was most sympathetic to Ssegirinya? I have seen on a platform where the mother of Ssegirinya, in her own mouth, on a platform provided by the people who are saying, we can't allow our person to go to the other side. She's saying good about Honorable Mpuga. Absolutely. I absolutely understand that. And yes, is there something good to be said about Honorable Mpuga? 100%. But what you're trying to ignore is the context. Folks who have subjected this person to all forms of torture, culminating into his death, are conniving with a man who has done something for the late. Let me tell you this, Mr. Imam. Maturity teaches us to have two positions which can both be true. Okay? Did Mpuga help somewhere with Honorable Ssegirinya? Absolutely. Maybe. But is Mpuga planning with folks who tortured Ssegirinya up to the point of his death? Absolutely. And then after understanding that, that Mpuga actually helped, but at the same time now, he's perceived as someone who is working with folks who led to the death of this gentleman. How do you think people are going to react? Oh, let's just ignore. Come on. Are you living in some sort of a utopia, detached from reality, and you'll be like, okay, let that be. These people, I don't know whether they think that folks, Ugandans, are just dunderheads, What is consuming you right now is an emotion called sadness. There's an emotion. Emotions are strong weapons. These are strong tools. Just like we saw one emotion being manifested during the burial of Honorable Ssegirinya, we see one that is actually consumed you called sadness. But as I conclude, here is Honorable. But before I do that, let me read you what Bobi Wine said about the issues of what he's trying to raise. Bobi Wine wrote on his platform showing how Museveni takes people's lives for granted. After his man and himself are behind a plot of that causes you to lose your life, they usually come around to be like, oh, we actually love you. We loved your child. Here is 20 million shillings. Use it for whatever. When General Museveni murdered Yasin Kauma in cold blood in 2018, he sent Catherine Kusasira to deliver 20 million shillings at his funeral. As usual, the condition for receiving the money was to thank Museveni and not to talk politics at his burial. Really. They promised that after the burial, the family would meet General Museveni and that he would take care of his family. Of course, all this did not happen, but they used the empty promises to conscript some members of the family. Some went as far as blaming Kauma's death on us. Like folks are blaming, oh, the murderers could be on both sides, the killers could be on both sides. His friends, instead of the regime on whose orders he was murdered. Oh boy. History repeats itself, or fools do. When they shot and killed our comrade Dan Cheyune, they sent money to his family and went as far as draping his body in the NRM flag, even when he was known a people power activist. His family was coerced into thanking Museveni at the burial and shamelessly claiming that he was their supporter. Does this ring a bell to you? Does it remind you something? Or does it show you something? When they murdered Jakana Naduli, Museveni sent his minister, Chofa Togabye, who came with 10 million shillings at his funeral. They deployed thugs to intimidate mourners and insist that no one speaks the truth of what killed Jakana, who was abducted, tortured, and illegally detained and eventually murdered by the regime. For all these people, there has been no accountability for justice regarding their death. That has been their game all along, to kill our people and then take over their burial using money and false promises for public relations. The same happened with Honorable Ssegirinya Nebanda, Zebra Mando, Muhammad Ssegirinya, etc. The list is too long. You have seen them take over and give official funerals to prominent people who have died under very suspicious circumstances. They thought they would do the same game with Honorable Muhammad Ssegirinya. I salute the citizens who resisted the attempts to hand over his body to the very people who murdered him. They mocked him in life and wanted to mock him in death. Good enough, Honorable Ssegirinya, while he was still alive, or still lived, spoke repeatedly about the kind of a send-off he wanted to receive. I thank you all who tried to live up to his requests. Fight hard, our good brother. Mic drop. Now, let me show you what this guy, Honorable Medi Sereko, said.
Baana b'omufune bataziika kitaabwe. Ssegirinya Muhammad okufaako tekunaggwa. Ne muddira ne mugenda ne mumanyiira abantu gye yafiiriddwa. Nedda tekiriyo ekyo. Buli omu abeere ne ttiimu ye. Tetuyinza kukkiriza abantu but there is something wrong. Buli omu azimba eyiye. How do you humiliate the mother of someone ajjanjabye omwana we for over 1 year? Basebo ne banyabo baasiba Ssegirinya Muhammad. Ssegirinya Muhammad ogenda okulayira. Yava Nairobi nga mulwadde. Nga ffenna kitugamba nti maybe kumumma beyiro kyamugaana okugenda okweyongerayo ku bujjanjabi, naye Ssegirinya yali mulwadde even before swearing in. Of course okwo n'ogattako stress gye yafuna musajja wattu ey'ekkooti naki n'ogattako musiba nga yakava Netherlands. Sebo n'owulira omuntu omusiru ng'avaayo aga nti ekya Ssegirinya kye kino. Of course there are contributing factors. But there is no single individual that is responsible for the death of Ssegirinya. No. Sebo ne mugenda ne muyimirira maka g'omugenzi ne mugaa nti mayiti ye tejja kufuluma mumuswalidde swala ey'ekitundu tetegeerekeka. Tekisoboka. Awo twawudde ebino bikoma ku mulembe gwa Museveni. Museveni gw'oyimirizaawo buno obujjega. It cannot happen. It cannot happen. It cannot happen. Ssegirinya had underlying causes. Yalina obulwadde obulala obwali bumuluma. Ekyabwongeza, and this is the reality. Everyone knows fenna abali close to him. Naye ekyabwongeza kyali simple. Nti denying him medical attention, and we all spoke about it. But what right does it give you Uganda okudenying abaana ba Ssegirinya okuziika kitaabwe? Bano, these people bagenda kulabirira abaana abo. These are people that abandon children of people. Nga bamaze okufa tebalina mukwano. Omukwano baali bagugyewa n'omuntu. For them it's all about politics, no friendship, teri mukwano. Politicking. Sloganeering. Walalalala wolokoso.
Tetugenda kubikkiriza abaana ne bataziika kitaabwe. These folks. You know, Uganda is a country where many people are easily lied to. And when it comes to politicians who have mastered the art of language, they're easy to manipulate people. When chaos ensued and whatever happened at the burial of Ssegirinya, the only person that sort of kidnapped the children of the late was none other than Matthias Mpuuga. Abaana ne bataziika ku kitaabwe. Ani abadde abalina nga wa speech. Omukolo gugootanye teguliiwo, talina mugenzi, talina bantu bazze, tewali kigenda mu maaso n'agamba abaana mujje n'abakwata mu kifo ky'okubasindika baziike kitaabwe. Kati kino ate anenya Bobi Wine. Tetugenda kubikkiriza buli omu abeere ku ttiimu ye. Ttiimu yange ogimanyi. My name is Mordecai Murisa. Mwebale nnyo mwenna ndowooza tuwezezza omutwalo gumu n'ekitundu. Simanyi. I'm going to check. Naye twabadde tunaatera okubaweza omutwalo gumu n'ekitundu. Mission yaffe yakweza emitwalo ebiri nga omwaka omwezi ogwokubiri tegunnaba kubeera nga guggwako. Oyinza okuba gwagenda okunyamba okubeera nga nkikola. Okubreakinga down interviews nga zino. Gojja okunyamba okubeera nga nkituukiriza. So, bw'okuza channel eno tuba tugenda kukikola. Mwebale nnyo mwenna ababaddeko mubeere bulungi ate era mweraba.
Did you enjoy what you just watched? I'm going to guess that you did. How about you consider subscribing to Mordecai Marissa YouTube channel? Thank you.